Today we're going to work on some ways to learn how to deal with groin, hip, or sacroiliac pain, which are really common problems with a lot of people, and how to deal with those muscle knots that are shortened muscles from maybe months, maybe years of tightening, and that they haven't fully been released. And so we're going to use some simple tools, like we're going to use a hard rubber ball, something around 4 inches, or this is an actual trigger point ball. We're going to use a little roller stick called the stick, and we'll use a foam roller to help address some of these problem areas. So we're going to start by addressing the front of the pelvis, where there's a muscle called the iliopsoas, and they're two actual separate muscles, but they, at one point, and I'll show in a minute, there's an area where you can actually release both of them at the same time. So the release isn't really rubbing, pushing, it's more of a hold, so that when there's a trigger point where when you push on an area, the muscle that is involved and has this tightened, contracted state will actually reflect out into other areas of your body. So the first one, again, that we're going to work on is the iliopsoas, and we're going to use a ball to help release it. It tends to help to really pull that pelvis and that hip forward, causing pain in the groin, back, and hip, and even pelvic floor. So what you're going to do for this one, you're going to take your ball, and we're going to use the black ball today. And what we're going to do is look at our anatomy on our pelvis. So on this first one, we're going to go straight down from the nipple line down to the pelvis, and I'm going to raise up where I have some X's on this muscle, and you're going to find the edge of your pelvic bone, which mine is right here, and you're going to go inside of them. So let's feel the top of your waist is your iliac crest, the top of your pelvis. And so you come straight down, you find just inside that bone where you have your little X's, and we'll show a close-up of that. So you can even take that ball, and sometimes I'll start off with people in that area. We'll show that in a close-up, where you can actually just lie on your back, put it on that trigger point on your pelvis inside. It's like the soft spot inside the bone, and you could just massage it with your hand. And sometimes I'll start people off with that. When you're ready to progress, we're going to work on, you're going to come down and lie on your tummy. So you'll take that ball, you found your spot, you're going to roll onto your side and onto your tummy with your ball inside the bone, and you're going to find, like I found right away, a tight area of where the iliopsoas, and there's pressure right in that area, and I'm going to hold it there. I could stay on my elbows, I could come down here, I could bend my knee. So whatever feels like, I feel the most release in this position, and then I'm just going to breathe, inhale, exhale for 30 to 90 seconds, and you're just going to hold that area, relax, and breathe. So what are you looking for when you put that ball there? You're looking for, could be a painful, tight area. What you're looking for is, it may be really tender at first, and then as you hold that point, it starts to slowly lessen. Sometimes you find a point and you have to move a fraction up or down or right and left. We can't move too far right on this side because we'll run right into that bone. But that's our first iliopsoas, where you can get those two together. And if you move up just a little bit more on your pelvis to the higher X, which we're going to show you in a close-up, and you really get on the inside of that pelvis, you can get the iliacus alone, which is a very hard muscle to actually get at. But we're going to try that with our ball. So after we release the front of the hip, you think of a balance of muscles. So there's muscles pulling one way on one side, and there's opposing muscles on the other side. So if the front of the pelvis, those muscles deep in here, like the iliopsoas, are tight, very often there's a culprit on the back of the buttock area that we need to work at. One of the major ones is, I'm going to come up and show you the origin of that muscle. So you're going to see right at the side of the sacrum. The sacrum, so here's your tailbone, here's your sacrum, and it's right on the side of there. We want to get in there to that piriformis that comes down and inserts into our hip. So the way we're going to try that is we're going to take that ball and we're going to lie on our back and lift our buttocks up and put it right next to that sacrum and right next to that tailbone. Find a trigger point, hold it there, breathe, and feel that release. You might have to go a fraction up, a fraction down. You may have to work to, like mine is pretty sensitive right now. So you want to feel yourself breathe and just try to sink into it. Breathe, inhale, exhale, and sink into it. And maybe move up, down, and feel if you have trigger points. Again, trigger points are tender areas that can refer out, or they're just intensely painful, 30 to 90 seconds to release that. If it hurts and it keeps getting worse, then we come off of it and we're doing too much. So another way to release that, I'm going to give you a couple of options, is to take your roller, sit on your roller, and say you're working that right side, you're going to lift your left leg up and just roll on that buttocks. And you can do them both kind of at the same time, but just roll with your roller on the buttocks next to the sacrum. And if you find a sore area, the same thing. You can hold it there and release it. It's not as pinpointed as the other with the ball, but it can be very effective. So the next area we're going to get at is if you just lift up your shirt and you feel where we were with the iliopsoas was just inside of that bone of the pelvis. So inside, right there, the flare of the pelvis, just below that and around the corner to the right is the tensor fascia lata, which also connects into the hip, and it also goes into a large area along the outside of the thigh where a lot of muscles attachments go. Everyone talks about rubbing and rolling on your IT band, and your IT band, it's not a really great idea to roll on your IT band straight on you. Really, a good idea is to work the muscles that insert into that IT band that really is fibrous, and it holds things in place. It's not really like a muscle with trigger points. So our TFL is our next one, which can become exquisitely tight for people with pain in the front of their hip, pain on the side of their hip, or anywhere in the back of the buttock area and sacrum, sacroiliac joint. So now what we're going to do is take that ball, and we're going to, instead of taking our roller and just rolling up and down that IT band, we're probably going to get more effective pain relief if we find our spot. We roll on our side, and it's a little bit forward. You lie on your side and you roll a little bit forward, and you find that tender spot. So your pelvis, it's just around the corner from the edge of the pelvis, and you just move around until you find your trigger point, and you hold on 30 seconds to 30 to 90 seconds is best. And again, sometimes you have to move around to find where that painful area is, and I'm on mine right now. Breathing into it. If you aren't relaxed and breathing into it, it's hard for that muscle to let go. That muscle may have been tight for many, many years. So try that. When you do this treatment, you can do 90 seconds, maybe move to another area, do another 30 to 90 seconds, and then work the muscles that are sore for you. Try it once a day, then maybe every other day, because the area can be painful. Instead of doing it really, really hard and then trying to redo it in the next day, and some people it may be that you need to do it every day, but as you start to release these, hopefully with time, your problem becomes less, and it's much easier to release them. Maybe you need to release before a triggering activity to your pain or after a triggering, and you'll learn that with doing this. So there's another muscle that inserts, and it's part of your pelvis and part of hip and back pain, and it's, if you think of where your sit bones, so right now you're sitting on your sit bones, hopefully you're sitting in your nice Pilates posture with your neck long and everything stacked up, hips or pelvis, ribs, shoulders, and head. And so the ischium we're sitting on, those are the sit bones. And so you're going to take your hand and cup it, and you're going to reach under your bottom to that sit bone on the inside of the sit bone, and then sit down into that and put those fingers into that area and see if you can feel around and see if you have anything sore in there. And again, you can use your hands. If hands don't work for you, take one of your balls. I'm going to try the trigger point one. It's a little smaller, not quite as hard. And I'm going to take this ball and I'm going to put it on the inside of my sit bone and see if I have any soreness at that, or trigger points at that muscle attachment for the obturator internus. So that I can feel, for me, there's a nice little trigger point. It's not really painful, but it almost feels good on that right side. So you're going to do the same thing, breathe, try to release into it. And if it doesn't feel like you need it, or it's just too uncomfortable, then you're not going to do that one for now, or you're going to try and use your hands. So you could, I'm going to take that out, you could actually take that, roll on your side, bend your knees, and then you could feel that inside of those sit bones, lying on your side with your cupped hands, that sit bone, and just pull your hands on the inside of that sit bone. And again, work on that. And you can actually, that you can feel part of your pelvic floor right there doing that also. So the last tool that I want to show you for helping to release the pelvis and groin area is the stick. And this is something you can also purchase, the stick. And it has little rollers on it. And you can just release the front and the sides of your thighs. And sometimes that's so good because some of those thigh muscles in the front and the back actually insert into the pelvis, and so they can affect the pelvis. So just taking your stick and just kind of get a nice rolling over. We're not really holding trigger points here. You could if you find a tender point, but it's a little broader area. And so just kind of loosen up, come into the pelvis, come into the inner thigh. You could get your calves if you want to get down into your calves. So this is a common tool I recommend to a lot of people. So even sitting, you can get under your thigh. You could get the side. You could stand up and get that even a little more detailed. So I hope those tools will help you to release some of the pain in your pelvis, groin, and the back of the buttock area, and even the side of the leg by getting into some of those muscles. So remember, you hold the trigger points for 30 to 90 seconds. You can move around a little teeny bit in each direction, and do it, start off every other day, and if you need to, you can do it every day or before and after an activity that might be a trigger to some of your pain. We just need to keep those muscles loose as long as possible, with good tension, and then in the future we'll talk a little bit more about hip strengthening and the strengthening part and the core part of how to keep our pelvis and our hips and our back pain-free.